and welcome to Two Mediums.
One large universe.
And guess what? We're together in the same room.
For real.
We can touch each other. So, Karen Skolski, medium to the stars, has flown all the way over to the UK, to England from New Jersey. And we've had an amazing nearly 10 days. She's going back tomorrow.
So sad.
Yeah, I'm really sad. I'm going to miss you.
I'm going to miss you too.
Let's not start crying.
No.
Okay, so we thought we'd talk to you about our travels this week. We've been to loads of places. Poor old Karen, she's literally hit the ground running, haven't you?
Yes, but I'm enjoying it.
You're enjoying it, that's the main thing. And we've tried to cram quite a lot into our paranormal tour. So there may be a few episodes to this. But today we thought we might concentrate on our little trip up north to Chillingham Castle. Karen, what did you think?
I loved it, and it was the Chillingham Castle. It was the perfect name for it.
Yeah, it was pretty creepy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So maybe tell you a bit of history about Chillingham Castle, if that's okay, folks. So it's actually said to be the most haunted castle in England. And we had a couple of experiences up there that we're going to share with you. It's said to have more than 100 ghosts haunting it. Well, we didn't see 100 ghosts, did we?
No, but I'm assuming that there's more.
Yeah, I think if we'd have stayed longer, we were actually quite glad to get out of there in the end. We were pretty tired and it was getting pretty spooky and late, wasn't it? So the castle is in Northumberland, right on the Scottish border. And King Edward I used this castle as an accommodation in 1298 while heading for his fight with William Braveheart Wallace. It's a place of war, torture and death. And we were told when we were there, it was the UK's premier centre for torture. Ooh, indeed. So in the beginning, it started off with quite nice beginnings. It was used as a monastery, and there's a legacy of monks being there, isn't there?
Yes.
But obviously that changed, and when King Edward I came in, then it all went a little bit south. Now it was a particularly important castle, and I'm not going to go too much history, but it was because of its strategic location, right next to the England-Scotland border. So it made it quite easy for people when they were captured to be brought down and attacked. And although this castle actually wasn't really attacked itself, people would be brought there, wouldn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't come back.
No. And there was all manner of atrocities there. Now, there's a lot of history about it online. There's a series of families, isn't there? And there was a linkage to Earl Grey tea because the Greys were there, weren't they?
Okay.
However, for us, we were quite interested in the darker side of the history and the executioner that was there. I'm going to say gentleman, but there was nothing gentle about him. John Sage. He was ruthless, and yeah, he had his own torture chamber there, and many types of toys, his toys that he created, didn't they? Do you remember the bed of nails?
Yes, I touched that.
Yeah. How did that feel?
Not good.
So it wasn't just that, you're going to get plumped onto a bed of nails. We're talking like 6-inch nails, do you think?
Right, 6-inch nails. And then underneath, they would have a fire.
Yeah.
They would have a fire, and they would just let the fire go back and forth.
They'd have people holding this grate and basically toasting you.
Yes.
This man, torturer, was an absolute deviant. I mean, he was nicknamed John Dragfoot which might explain why he was bitter. He was injured as a lieutenant in an army of some sort and was unable to fight anymore. So obviously he got this job as the executioner, and he just cold-blooded. He was called the Butcher of the Scots, and he had no qualms about executing children, monks, Scots, people. Yeah, he just loved it. They reckon he probably executed around 50 people a week. So think of that, and he was in that position for over 3 years.
I'm almost feeling sick thinking about that.
I know, it was awful, wasn't it? Just awful. And Karen and I, we did the tour. We had a lovely tour guide, Andy, and he told us a lot of information, but we went up into this room that we called the Edward I room and purported to be quite haunted. And as rooms go, I mean, it was just a small room, wasn't it, with a mezzanine level, but it felt dense in there.
Yeah.
How did you feel when we went in?
I didn't like it. It felt like
Oppressive.
Yeah, oppressive.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but from the mezzanine level, you kind of felt a bit watched, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, we were all sat in there and we were being given information about the room, and, you know, that they'd had cleaners that had been in there, hadn't they? That a particular cleaner couldn't deal with something that she'd heard and actually left her job after many, many years. Anyway, we sat there, Karen and I and my cousin Alison, one of our little constellations, was sat on a bench. There were lots of other people there, maybe about 12, 15 of us.
Yeah.
All in this room. And as we were sat there, we got a little bit of distance between us, but I felt something whack into the back of my foot on my heel and kick my foot forward. And I was like, you know.
She said, "Did you kick me?"
Yeah, and I could see it wasn't any of those. But it got me jumping, and even the tour guide was looking at me again. And then as that happened, we started to hear noises in like this little room that they had of it.
A couple times.
Yeah, just that scratching and clawing. It was a very strange atmosphere in there. And it was at that point he told us that this was where this John Sage, this executioner, this butcher of the Scots, that was his bedroom, that was his living quarters. So yeah, I mean, I feel like possibly that could have been him. But it also turns out, I mean, this guy liked to take his job home. There were children killed in this room. There was lots of people slaughtered and butchered. He was an absolute maniac. So, you know, from a paranormal investigation point of view, it was good for us because we felt it and we had some physical.
Right, evidence.
From a human point of view, it felt horrible. We were given a tour outside the castle, which was equally as interesting. So, Karen, what did you feel when we went down? I think it was called the Devil's Causeway or the Devil's Walkway, which would have been where they bring the bodies from the castle down to the hanging trees. Now, bear in mind, you wouldn't get a straightforward hanging. You wouldn't be taken and given a hanging an orderly manner, if there is such a thing. You would have been possibly put into a cage. You could have been on the rack. You could have had all manner of torture and be half dead and then dragged to the hanging
tree.
It was ridiculous, wasn't it?
Yeah. And there was like, what, 2 fallen?
Yeah,
and then one still standing. Yes. And we had to pass under there. And we got some activity.
We did. Again, we used the camera there when we picked up on the tree that was still erect.
Yes.
We picked up some activity. I don't know. There was a certain stillness about the air around there. It was almost like, you know, when you walk into a church and you get that sense of peace and reverence. Ironically, that's how it felt out there, didn't it?
It was like they were almost relieved that this was the last stop.
That they were no longer being tortured. I mean, it's horrific to think what had happened. But as we were walking away from them, I got the nudge to turn around. And clairvoyantly, because I'm a medium, I saw a lady stood there and she had a white bonnet and like a pinny, but an apron, but it was a long apron and a dress. And she just stood there and waved, smiling. And it was really, really quite nice. But I mentioned this to the guide later, and he said that there'd been sightings of a lady there. They had a name for her, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
And she'd had a role within the castle and often had sightings. The only difference is they'd seen her carrying a basket. I didn't see her with a basket. However, you know, I did tell them what I did see. But for anybody interested in a paranormal investigation, Chillingham Castle is up there with the spook factor, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we could have done so much more, but as sensitive people, it's kind of difficult to be where there's been so much torture. It leaves an imprint, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
You know, a sadness and a chaos within the fabric of the building. I mean, obviously the castle has been around for many, many years and people have gone and visited it, but I feel like it could have done with a really good smudging and a blessing.
Oh my goodness, yeah, for days.
Yeah. But it's much loved by the owners and it's kept in a, albeit chaotic manner. It's kept, a lot of the artifacts don't belong with the castle. They've been sourced afterwards because obviously during the war, soldiers were burning things and looting things, and a lot of the original features were no longer there. Other than the torture equipment, which was moved upstairs, and torture chamber, which is on the lower level beneath the fireplace of 2 rooms, is completely locked off to the general public. Now, we were told it was because it had a really bad feeling. It was decided to never step foot in there again. And it does have the dead bodies there, the skeletons of people that met an untimely death there. So it wouldn't surprise me that it would feel very different to the dungeon that we actually did see.
Absolutely. And they still have the bones every once in a while come up from outside, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they had a flood a few years ago. And out of nowhere, these bones just rose to the surface of the grass. So you can imagine how many people died.
Right, and they didn't bury them. They would just leave the bodies there to rot.
It was just so sad. And they were telling stories about how the monks they'd have to walk across there on their pilgrimage to Holy Island. And they'd have to walk past the hanging trees and they wouldn't be able to help people. So they'd literally have to put their hoods up and look the other way. And there were times when monks, try and help people and be hung themselves. And these people were hung so that they would take days to die, hung upside down, just bleeding to death, but just not enough to die, so that the torture was extended.
Yes.
It's horrific.
And just left there, no burial, nothing.
Yeah, it was just awful. On the plus side, if you could talk about retribution, this particular man, this John Sage, who we think possibly haunted this room, was actually tried and hung himself after his 3 years that he spent there. And I think he was hung, drawn, quartered. They used everything on him. They did the works. So, he got a taste of his own medicine there. A bit of backhanded justice.
Yes. It's ironic his last name is Sage.
Yeah, because as mediums, we use sage to clear bad energy in rooms. Yeah, he sounds like a really, ordinary name for a monster.
Yes.
Doesn't sound like a monster's name, does it? So John Sage, I think, John Dragfoot or the Butcher of the Scots, I think is probably a more apt name for him. So if anybody's visited Chillingham Castle and had any experiences, we'd really love to know.
Yes, we'd love to hear that.
Yeah, we definitely would. Keep listening, folks, because there is another one that we slipped in, very sneaky, cheeky look at an abandoned castle and a church. But that's for another day. You've been listening to
2 Mediums,
One Large Universe from England. I don't know what she's singing, but we're going to put something English on. Consider yourself at home. We'll put something on. Anyway, this is 2 Mediums,
One Large Universe,
in a nutty place in the centre of England.